Hey guys, thanks for joining us for another live. We'll try to keep this one quick today. So I've been part of building literally hundreds of websites at this point. I've been doing it for probably way too long. But I've seen a lot of success. I've seen some failure. I've seen everything along the way. And one of the things that I've realized is that in order for it to be successful, a website has to have four distinct voices all along the way. And so we're going to talk about those four voices for a successful web rebuild today. So the first voice is the organization or the company. And this one is very obvious, like we're leading with the easiest one. But there has to be someone that represents the goals of the organization in the room pretty much at all times. And so we're also going to talk about these in terms of what is the superpower that each of these voices has and what is the potential weakness. And so the superpower for the first voice is really engagement, being engaged all the way through the process. And then that weakness on the other side is a lack of involvement. Like it used to be whenever you would build a website, the client or the customer would come in and say, hey, I want to build a site. And then they would go off and, 6 weeks later, you'd give them their complete site. That just isn't the way we work anymore. Like it's too sophisticated. The needs are too great. The stakes are too high to not be engaged along the way. The second voice is the agency, and so it's us, right? But it can also be an internal voice. I know a lot of successful rebuilds that have come where they set aside people in the organization to represent the agency. But what the agency has to do is they have to drive the project. There has to be someone that really drives the project because their superpower is experience. Like they've done this before, they understand it, they know how to make it happen. But as you know, what comes with that experience is that weakness, which is sometimes they can procrastinate. It's so common to them that if they're not careful, they can get behind. So that's why they have to stay in that role and they have to drive the project. I had a client early on, and he pulled me aside one time and he said, you never lose time at the end of a project. It's always in the beginning. And so the more work that you can do up front with the agency really driving it, the better chance you'll have at a successful rebuild, right? Those are kind of the main audiences, but as we move into the next one, that third voice is really the audience. And that is our customer, that could be our donor, but that is the person that we are building the site to convert. And so you got to make sure that you listen to them. You find whether it be through user stories, conversations, user testing, you've got to find a way to really get them in the room. We love market research. That is a great way to get the voice of the audience in the room because they're the ones that have to drive the work that you do. They're the ones that have to drive what actually happens on the site. So the strength that they bring, their superpower is really focus. But their weakness is misinterpretation. And really that comes from the agency and the organization overvaluing how they view what the audience wants instead of really listening to the donor or the customer. And so got to be a great listener in that. A couple questions to ask is, what is confusing to you? So whenever you're talking to people, when you're on our site, what is confusing? And then Mark, who's our VP of market research, one of the things that he always asks is before you even talk to the client, before you ask them questions about your specific site, ask them what they would expect to find on a site like yours. And so what that does is that really sets the stage for, all right, they are not going to be persuaded by anything that they see on your site whenever they answer that question first. And it gets some of that bias out of the way early on. So got to be aware that you're going to drive them to see things the way you see them and really focus to listen to them for what they're really saying. And the final voice is that of the analytics. Google has done a fantastic job. They give everybody free access to analytics, and there's so much data that it can really be overwhelming. But if you know how to listen to that data, you know how to review that data, it can be really, really valuable. And so those insights are really the superpower of that, the analytics. But the weakness is really overvaluing the past. There's a reason that you're building a new website, and oftentimes it has to do with the performance of the current site. So there's only so much you can learn from the current site's functionality and the current site analytics that are really valuable when you move into that next site. And so it's really important to look very distinctly at what insights you're going to be pulling. So if you listen to these 4 voices, you'll be well on your way to a successful rebuild. And so I just want to go back and say we're talking about the voice of the organization, the voice of the agency, the voice of the audience, and then the voice of the analytics. So invite those into your rooms, use them for their superpowers and avoid their weaknesses, and you're going to build a great site. Thanks.